Hello, and welcome to Hub Cymru Africa's podcast. I'm your host, Cath Moulogo. I'll be leading you through the series of podcasts as we discuss what's important to the Wales Africa community working in global solidarity. This is the third in a series of podcasts, and this episode is being recorded with support from the Welsh Government under the Wales Africa Women's Empowerment Scheme. Hub Cymru Africa manages a small women's empowerment grant scheme that supports projects in Uganda and Lesotho working on the issues impacting women and girls. We also offer a range of support to the Wales Africa community. So whether it's help fundraising, one-to-one advice, networking or training you're looking for, our support is free. Just get in touch by emailing advice@hubcymruafrica.org.uk. But first, let's have a listen to this podcast. Today, we're talking about working in solidarity with women in Africa, and I'm delighted to welcome Hub Cymru Africa's very own Beth Kidd. Hi, Beth.
Hiya.
How are you doing?
I'm all right, thank you very much.
Can you please introduce yourself?
Of course, I'm Beth Kidd, and I'm the Senior Development Support Manager at Hub Cymru Africa.
Lovely. Okay, so Beth, what can we expect to hear from the podcast today? Who did you speak to, and what do they have to say?
You can expect a brilliant podcast today. I really enjoyed recording this. I spoke to Sunshine Komusana, who's the Programme Associate in Sexual Reproductive Health and Rights at Akina Afrika in Uganda. And I also spoke to Advocate Jonas, who's the Director of Nairasha Legal Support in Maseru in Lesotho. And we talked about a number of different things. Firstly, what solidarity means to them in the work that they do. We also talked about some of the barriers that women and girls face. And we also talked about using networks and social connection to create change. It was a really inspiring and empowering discussion. So I hope you enjoy it as much as I did.
I'm really looking forward to it. Let's have a listen.
Hi, ladies. Thanks very much for joining me today. Joanna, please, could you introduce yourself?
I am Advocate Jonas from Lesotho. I'm the director for a non-profit company named Nairasha Legal Support, which assists victims and survivors of gender-based violence with access to services such as justice, psychosocial support, and we also do capacity building work and legal education for women and girls. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And Sunshine, can I ask you to tell us a bit about yourself and what you do?
So my name is Sunshine Komusana. I work with Akina Afrika. I am a feminist lawyer and activist. I like to think I'm an activist, but I do it mostly on the internet. So I work with Akina Afrika, which is a Pan-African leadership development organization. We are based in Kampala, Uganda, but we work in a number of African countries. So we are in Uganda, we are in Kenya, we are in Zambia, we are in Ethiopia, we are in Sudan, and we are also in Tunisia. And our work surrounds three thematic areas, one on sexual reproductive health and rights, the other on economic justice and climate action, and then the other one on women's political leadership. So I support the sexual reproductive health and rights program as the program associate, and that is work that I've done over the last 2 years. And so yeah, that's really about me and the work that I do. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. That's great. So as I mentioned, we're here today to talk about your work with women and girls and to share with our listeners how we can support women and girls better in our partnerships and our projects. I'm going to start by sharing a little bit about what solidarity means to us in Wales. We had our Global Solidarity Summit earlier this year, and we brought people together to kind of share their thoughts on what solidarity means to them and how we can do it better. And there was discussions around the values of solidarity, so talking about respect, equality, inclusion and compassion as important values in solidarity work. We talked about partnerships and how they're the cornerstone to solidarity, and that enacting solidarity takes time. Forming those partnerships and gaining that trust with the communities you work with can't be done overnight, so it's important to allow time for that solidarity work. There was discussions around understanding power and privilege and allowing people to amplify people's voices and giving people a say and being able to share their views and experience, and enabling people to feel heard and understood, and having that two-way dialogue and listening rather than always going in and talking, and that helps build trust and honesty when you're doing project work. So, Joanna, can I start by asking you, what does solidarity mean to you when you're working with women and girls in Lesotho?
For us, as I have mentioned, that we work with mostly victims of and survivors of gender-based violence. For us, this is because just like in any part of the world, in Lesotho, women face the same struggles. Whether you are a professional, you are a stay-at-home mom, or you are a housewife. So the same struggles and problems that women in the grassroots face are the ones that we still face even in our workplaces. So working in solidarity with women for us means being a safe space for women to be, because we are constantly women are constantly being told who to be, what to be, and how to be everywhere, even in workplaces. So for us, as women and girls being our clients, they are also our sister, and we have a program called Sister-in-Law. Not sister-in-law as in your spouse's sibling, but your sister who is vested in law, meaning that we come to you like your family would, but we come to you with the help from our expertise that you would otherwise not get. And also because the understanding really is that no one is immune. We are not immune. Even if we are professionals and we are doing this work, we are not immune to the struggles and the problems that our clients face. Meaning we could also be victims the next day. So working in solidarity with women, especially regarding our clients, means that we offer them the support, the help, and the services that they need, not what we assume that they need. For instance, a client may come to my office and say, you know what, I don't want to press charges, I just want to vent and speak out. And I will give them that space. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. That's really important. And like you say, it's important to remember that women and girls aren't a homogenous group, and, our backgrounds might all be different. But like you say, a lot of the challenges we face are the same, and that putting yourself in the person you're speaking to's shoes, really helps build that connection and that trust. Thank you. That's really interesting. Sunshine, can I ask you the same question? What does solidarity mean to you when you're working with women and girls?
Thank you so much for the question, Beth. In thinking about this conversation, I went and started looking at resources and thinking, what have other feminists said about the meaning of solidarity? And some of the things that I was thinking about was there's this quote by feminist author Bell Hooks, may they rest in peace, around solidarity not being the same as support. And to experience solidarity, we must have a community of interests, shared beliefs and goals around which to unite, build sisterhood. Now we also have to say siblinghood because of the connotations around sisterhood being mainly for people who identify as women. Support is occasional, and I think a lot of times when we are doing work with women and girls, it looks a lot like we are providing support instead of solidarity. And then also Indian feminist author Arundhati Roy, I hope I'm not butchering her name, who says that there is no such thing as the voiceless. They are only the deliberately silenced or the preferably unheard. And so I thought, when I was thinking, what does solidarity mean? I started thinking, what solidarity isn't. And solidarity is not about centering, it's not about centering ourselves. Being able to do work with women and girls and not for them. which means when you're starting, for example, a project, inquiring if this with them, like co-creating projects and saying, is this solution going to work for you? And then being able to tailor solutions to what their needs are. When Joanna was speaking about working with survivors of violence, one of the things that we've learned in our work is to ask, when someone comes to you and they have experienced violence, asking, what do you need? Because a lot of work and response to violence has always been report, but the system does not favor reporting. So it's saying, what do you need? Do you need legal support? Do you need therapy? Do you need a shelter? So it's solidarity is about ensuring that the work we do centers the experiences of women and girls. It's also about ensuring that even before we do this work, we are asking questions, we are bringing them into the conversation, we are creating projects that they can sustain by themselves long after, we have wrapped up and, we've ticked our KPIs and our work plans and finished the project and done our end of project report. Them being able to see themselves in the work so that they can sustain it is, I think, what solidarity means. But also, it also means not doing harm, right? So not doing any further harm. So when you're working with women and girls in different contexts, especially in Africa, there are conversations around not Africa, Uganda specifically, because I haven't done work in all the 54 African countries. There's maybe cultural context that you have to keep in mind, legal and policy context you have to keep in mind. For example, if you provide resources to do work around access to legal and access to safe abortion, what happens if they are working in a context where, for example, like Uganda, that's where abortion is still heavily restricted, if they get in trouble with the law, so being careful, putting in place safeguarding in order to respond to harm that may come as a result of the work that you've done. And I think really in very many words, that is what solidarity is. And finally, it's also about checking our power and privilege. And I know that, Beth, you mentioned this, that when you're coming to work with women and girls, you come in with your own, maybe sometimes conscious and unconscious biases. So creating the space for yourself to also unlearn them, and then so that then you don't project your biases on the women and girls that you're working with. Mm-hmm. So I think that's, in many words, what solidarity means.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Sunshine. That was a really interesting answer. And I think, emphasising the importance of being, understanding the context, be that the kind of the macro context of the community or village you're working in, but also the micro context of that specific person and their experience and what they want, and being, survivor-led is a really important point. Thank you very much. I'm just now going to ask about what some of the barriers to supporting women and girls might be. Joanna, if I can start with you, in your experience, what have been some of the challenges your organisation has faced when working with women and girls?
Firstly, we as Nairasha are a new institution. Yes, my partner and I have been doing this work for a number of years. For instance, I've been practicing since 2014 and she since 2010. But the company is quite new, so we may be able to offer support or services to women only to a certain extent due to lack of resources. Resources in this instance being the fact that any sort of support really always boils down to sources. To sources of any form of support is costly, and in one way or another we are going to need funds to avail whatever resource we need. For instance, if we are looking to offer legal support, which will entail ensuring and assisting the survivor to report a case, it's going to mean that we are going to have to go to the survivor, because in most cases our clients are people who are not financially privileged, And whatever we do, it means we don't charge them for the services. So firstly, you have to go to where they are. That's traveling expenses, and the process of reporting the case until to a point of the case being formally in the court to prosecution to finalizing the case is quite long and hideous, and it requires constant traveling, and it requires availability of professionals, in which case it means that we as Nairasha will need more, we need more human resource to be able to facilitate the kind of help that we want to extend to our clients. In a case where it would be psychosocial support, because we are a firm of legal practitioners, we have to outsource services of a psychologist, for instance. And in this case, that means we need to provide for them to be able, even if we may have volunteers, but for them to be able to meet up with the client, for them to be able to have a conducive space where they can be able to have proper sessions. For instance, our office space is quite small, so where they are going, if they are going to consult on psychological impacts of whatever matter the client came to us with, they're going to need privacy. That means our office space is not suitable for that, and they usually can't just go to the survivor's place, because the survivor's home or residence might be the source of the problem. So it's things like that. Sometimes it's medical. It's true that our medical services are mostly subsidized, but public hospitals and public clinics are not very accessible, because for instance, a person who has been sexually assaulted, it wouldn't be preferable for them to be around other people, standing in long queues, waiting for the medical consultation, only for them to go back to the police station, because they are usually told not to bathe or to change clothes or whatever. Meaning, when going to report, they have to go back to the medical attention as they were when they went to report, and still go back to the police station. So you will see that the process of reporting, getting medical attention and medical services and treatment that may be needed, and mostly for having the medical report filed and filled, in order for the police officers to be able to report the case efficiently, is quite hideous. And it's usually the problem for most survivors to pursue cases to court, because they are just some just give up along the way. Yeah. Well, so basically, limited resources. Yes, limited resources in all respects, really.
Yeah, human resource and financial resource. And I think it's really important what you were saying about taking, when designing programs or projects, having that holistic, understanding of the whole context and everything that is needed, and all the resource and time and capacity that's going to take. And if that's not something one organisation can provide, looking for those connections, like you say, getting in the psychosocial support. So that's a really important point. Thank you. Sunshine, can I ask you the same question? What barriers have you faced in your work when working with women and girls?
So I will just start from the obvious. When we're talking about barriers to working with women and girls, we have to start from the number one barrier, which is patriarchy, right? So we are organizing and supporting and working in solidarity with women and girls in a system that is inherently designed to keep them subjugated. And so that is a big barrier, because I will cite, for example, our women's political leadership work, where you will have a feminist training on a feminist understanding on women's political leadership, train political leaders so that they can be in decision-making spaces. But then when they go back home, they will have maybe their partners or their spouses telling them they can't maybe run for office, or if they have to do it, they have to figure out their own childcare plan. And so those very systemic barriers that are embedded within the context of working with women and girls, and that often there is no will to change, especially when it comes to supporting women and girls. A lot of issues look like a woman's problem. When we talk about reproductive justice work, it looks like that's a woman's problem. And as long as the patriarchy is working the way it's designed to work, we will continue to run into the same issues. And yes, feminism is the response to this system of subjugation, and to continue really to challenge even people who give us support to do work with women and girls, to say there also has to be work around ensuring that men understand the ways in which they contribute to the issues of women, the issues that women are facing, and how they benefit from the subjugation of women. And so that would be like my number one barrier off the top of my head. Patriarchy, yeah. Please dismantle the patriarchy in all the continents and time zones. And then the other thing is also around like capitalism. So the way we work, and as like civil society organizations, a lot of our resources come, it's aid, or it's money that is coming in to do a certain project, to fulfill a certain agenda, usually in connection to maybe the conversations or agendas at the global level and global regional level and things like that. And so when the money runs out, usually then the aid, when the grant runs out, it usually means there is going to be a pause to the work. And so really working in that produce results and then like pack up and go kind of system is a big barrier, because sometimes the length of a project has not really created a sustainable solution, and also the fact that even us who are doing this work, most of us are here not because like some of the people who do work like this are there because of their convictions. Like I will do this work. But there are a lot of people who are also doing it because it's just a job. And so the fact that anytime now you can just change and maybe go into the private sector because maybe the pay is better, and you drop the ball on the work around supporting women and girls. And that's so because we work in inherently exploitative systems, really. So there's definitely going to be a barrier. I know that Joanna has already spoken to resources, so I will not divulge so much on that. But I think maybe the other layer I want to add to the barrier around resources is the fact that there is no political will for our governments to put resources in supporting women and girls, like issues of women and girls. So I'll give an example. Recently, we're having a conversation because April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. We're having a conversation around how can we use the Maputo Protocol, to end, to bring light to the conversation around sexual violence and violence against women and girls. And I was saying that we need to start framing the conversation around state failure, because the number of women and girls experiencing violence are a result of the failure of the state to protect women and girls. But there, in Uganda, for example, I don't know a single women's shelter that is funded by the government, right? Our government in last year cut the budget to health in the middle of a pandemic, but also knowing that women and girls are the biggest consumers of our public health. They're the ones that go to public hospitals. They're the ones who rely on public health centers for. They are either in the hospital as patients, or they are there taking care of people. So the fact that there is no deliberate effort to address the systemic lack of resourcing for issues around reproductive justice, around addressing violence against women, around keeping girls in school by providing so it's just really deliberate state failure to provide resources. And so we keep working as civil society, but there's only so much we can do with the aid that we receive to be able to do this work if there is no for lack of a better phrase, I know I've said systemic so much, so let me use structure. If there is no structural solution, because these are really structural issues, and we can work at the micro level, provide the support we can, but unless we have that kind of resourcing that is, deep pockets, because governments have deep pockets, because we pay taxes, we can't, we'll always be working really just pouring ourselves and our energies into sort of a bottomless pit. So yeah, that's what I would say are the barriers. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunshine. Yeah, and that's a really important point, isn't it? It's not just about the project work, it's about the advocacy work and holding the governments to account and building those, as you mentioned earlier, sort of involving the men and the boys and building those male champions and those people who are in those positions of power through the patriarchy, to get them to be allies and to hold governments to account, to spend the money on the services and the support that's needed. So yeah, thank you. That's really interesting. Joanna, if I come to you, can I ask so when we were having our discussions in the Global Solidarity Summit and previously, a lot of the kind of things that came out of those discussions were women having really strong communication pathways and strong networks, and they often use the power of social connection really well, and that's an area that we can support to empower women through the power of social connection. How does that relate to some of your work? Do you see that in the work that you do?
As I mentioned previously, that we have a program called Sister-in-Law. So what we do in the program, some of the things that we do is that we hold networking sessions where we mostly give education on the basic give education to regular women and girls on basic law, principles of law, on principles of law that they need in their day-to-day lives. For instance, we give education on we have done on marriage, different regimes of marriage, the disadvantages and advantages of each regime, and we have done on the law of succession and estate administration, because mostly women are victims of property grabbing, especially those that were married. Even if they were married in community of property, the moment if their husband dies first, they usually become victims of property grabbing, in that the family members of the husband will just take all the property from them and leave them destitute, for one. Or for girls that girls are usually excluded in the hierarchy of succession, where their parents have passed on. So, and that is against the law, really, because our law is very clear. Our law provides for, especially where there isn't a valid will. We have a law on interstate succession, but usually people don't know this, because customarily women were regarded as minors, meaning they had to be taken care of by the male head of the family. So much that even when the husband died, the husband's family was to find another suitor, usually the husband's brother, to step into the shoes. That means taking over the woman as the husband and also as the head of the family. But that has since been done away with. That is no longer the case. That no longer needs to be the case, because yes, customary law is still applicable, but we also have civil law, which applies for interstate succession as well. So I think if we could have a bit more of this networking events that can be expanded even beyond our area of work, because we are based in Maseru in the city, but women in the rural still don't know this. We are unable to expand this education outside of where we are, and also if we have networking sessions whereby we exchange connections between ourselves as women, and especially as professionals, and try to find a way to help and support each other professionally. For instance, I may be a lawyer, but probably as actually evident in my area of work, I do need a bit of a psychologist here and there, and I may have a sister who is a psychologist and may need a lawyer in what they do. So this networking sessions that I was talking about could also help in formulating ways in which we as professionals can also support each other in order to strengthen whatever services that we each give, and whatever support that we each give to other women. And mostly because I think this events and these initiatives need to expand mostly into the rural areas, because it's different. Like, it's different so much that you can hold a conversation with a woman who lives here in Maseru. They are much more knowledgeable, and they are much less susceptible to abuse or to falling victim, or even if they are victims, but they mostly know what to do. But women in the rurals are less knowledgeable, and the resources are lacking, and they just don't have anyone that is there for them. Yes. So if we could have this sessions and this events across the country, or reach as many women as possible, especially the ones in the rurals, because they are mostly marginalized. They are the ones that are the worst victims of GBV. They suffer the worst kinds, the worst types. They live with the worst types of GBV. So yes, I think,
thank you,
sharing connections and expanding our connections to other women as well.
It's really important. Yeah, like you say,
Yes.
we're stronger together, aren't we? And the skills that we each have, when we combine them, makes us even stronger. Yes, thank you. And Sunshine, the same question to you. Sort of networks and social connection. Do you see that as a strong part of the work that you do?
So I will maybe say more like not less, but like more of like community, creating community instead of like network, because I believe, like as feminists, as organizers, we all need community, but also because women primarily exist and thrive in community. When we think about our mothers, for example, there's a proverb around it takes a village to raise a child. You're raised by your child, your mother, your grandmother, your aunties, your sisters, and it's not any different, the way in which it translates into how we work. And also knowing that there is only so much you can do as a lone warrior, in terms of supporting women and girls, but also just really for yourself. Sometimes you need that power of the movement, the power of the collective, to be able to tap into it for example, like human resource and even like financial resource, but also emotional support. And I will give a very great example in Uganda at the beginning of 2020, young women were speaking up about their experiences of sexual violence on Twitter. And very quickly, what started as one young woman's story became a story of so many other people who are young women, especially at university, that were speaking up about particular abusers and how they had been violated at university. And from that, so realizing like that this conversation was happening as an organization, but we decided that we needed to convene a healing space for them. But also with the help of like other feminists, we created like a quick working group. There's a therapist in there, some lawyers, some journalists, some writers, and just really quickly put together a plan on how we can support them. And then bringing them together then also allowed them, first of all, the space to really experience sisterhood and solidarity, but then they also went ahead and created their own initiative, their own movement around, supporting survivors of violence. And some of them have gone ahead to do fundraising for therapy, fundraising for legal support and things like that. And it's very important to continue to work like that, because then the power of that solidarity that we are talking about really delivers great impact and great support. And also because we burn out, right? This work, first of all, is deeply personal, especially if you're a woman or a person who identifies as a woman doing it. Most of the people I know that do work around violence, around reproductive justice, have very deep connections to that work. Some of them even started out doing that work so that they can have space to tell their stories. And so it's deeply tasking emotionally. So to have that network, to have that community, means that you can take a break and you can decide, this month I am not available to participate in A, B, C, and G. I can take a sabbatical, so to speak, from the revolution and let other people do it, so that then also we can take care of ourselves. So I think definitely network, and there's such great power in the social network, like social media. Of course, it's also has its dangers, and that's a conversation for another day. But being able to connect with other organizers, for example, in different countries, in different parts of the world. For example, in a country like Uganda, where we have laws around cyber harassment. What I didn't share when I talked about the story of the young girls that were speaking up is one of them was actually arrested for speaking up about sexual harassment. They used the law, the abuser used the law on cyber harassment and cyberbullying to then have her arrested, and then thinking about how our maybe feminist sisters in Kenya can be able to do this work of supporting us without the victims themselves being the face of the conversation. So just really but also a good time, right? So we've talked a lot about
serious stuff, yeah.
about how the collective is great for for the work, but for doing the work and fighting against these oppressive systems, but also when we come together and just being able to be ourselves and share our stories in safe spaces, and so being able to harness the power of community, to take care of ourselves for the work, but also just really to have a good time, because we are more than the work that we do, right? So yeah, that's my answer.
Yes, thank you, Sunshine. That's a really, really important point, isn't it? And that's, saying to people, I hear you, I see you, I understand what you're going through. And that's the true definition of solidarity, isn't it? Is being there to allow people to step back and come back stronger. So thank you. That's really great. Well, we're kind of coming to the end of things. So thank you so much for your really interesting insights, both of you. I really appreciate it, and sharing your experiences and your learning with us today. Was there any last thoughts that either you wanted to share with us, either Joanna or Sunshine, before we go our separate ways?
Okay. From my side, but firstly, all I can say is that I'm truly grateful for this opportunity, because I have learned a lot from these conversations, especially on Sunshine's side. like I said earlier, maybe I didn't understand the questions the way you wanted to approach them.
No, it's
but
perfect.
it's also very interesting. I'm not done. But it's also interesting seeing how we both approach them differently, yet we are able to integrate them together, and we still having this platform. So it's really interesting and very insightful. It was really very, very insightful. I really enjoyed the conversation, really. A lot, and I've learned a lot.
Good. Me too. And like you say, it was really useful having the two different perspectives and looking at it from the two different levels. So no, it was the perfect combination, I'd say.
See, why it wouldn't have worked if we had our conversation and then you went and had
exactly
the same conversation with Sunshine on the side. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's much better to all be in the room. Sunshine, was there any last thoughts you wanted to share?
Yeah, so yes, thank you so much, Joanna. I also felt like I'm always in awe of people that do work with survivors of violence directly, because I know the amount of, like, it must take a lot from you, and so it's just really to reaffirm and validate the work that you're doing, and saying that I see you and just really happy to provide any support. And just really finally, I wanted to speak about the way in which when we work, we reinforce hierarchies, and we look at the women and girls as beneficiaries of our organizing instead of the people from whom we derive our power, and ultimately to whom we are accountable to. And I think that's just really what I wanted to emphasize at the end, that in doing all the work that we are doing, we have to continuously ensure that we are not reinforcing, right, power structures and things that are already what we are working against, but also to continue to be accountable to the people. I know a lot of projects say, oh, who are the beneficiaries? But the truth of the matter is those are just like people from whom you're deriving your power and mandate and relevance to do the work, and ultimately you should protect them and do no harm, and ensure that when you do harm, that you give them the opportunity to call you in on it, and also for you to take responsibility. So I think ultimately that's what solidarity is, and what to know that the women and girls are the experts of their own lived experiences, and so we shouldn't we should constantly draw from them to do the work. So thank you so much.
Thank you both.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah.
And truly not to just view them as subjects of our projects and work. Because when you say this, I just remembered, Beth, you remember that we are currently in the process of a law enforcement training project. Mm-hmm. So this other time we were towards the end of our session in another district, and we were working with village health workers and survivors of GBV. So this guy from the national television approaches me and says they would like they peeped through and saw in our conference hall that we had mattresses on the floor, blankets on the floor, and yoga mats on the floor, and it was just a relaxed environment. So they were interested in what we were doing. So I explained to them what we're doing, and they were like, no, we would like to interview you and some of your subjects, and we would like to cover what you're doing, the work that you're doing. No, it's not a work, first of all. Two, it's a community and people here, like what we are, this is a safe space, and it's only open to people who participated in it. So I'm not going to ask these people to be taken up and down, being interviewed about, so why are you here? And they have to say, because I was raped, or because, so they couldn't believe that I flat out refused them to be covered by the national television. And to hear Sunshine say that really validates and affirms that for me, because it's first of all, I was content when I was refusing, but then afterwards I was like, did I do the right thing? Or
Yeah.
so I just got validated, and
Yeah.
that was really important.
Yeah.
So
Trust your
thank
gut
you.
instinct. Trust your intuition. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. What a great note to end on. Well, thank you very much, both of you. Enjoy the rest of your days. But otherwise, thank you very much. And I will
Thank you,
hopefully one day see you again.
Yes, please.
I'll make
Please come up with another
Podcast,
or panel
Something.
discussion or whatever, something to talk about.
We will, I'm
I think
sure.
we should do this more often.
Yes, it's been brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you both. Take care. Bye.
Good afternoon.
Bye. Bye.
Oh my gosh, that was brilliant. Thank you, Beth, for bringing us that recording. I really enjoyed it. How was that for you, listening back to it?
It was great. It was great. It was as good as I remember. It's left me feeling really positive. I could have gone on chatting to them for days. And they really complemented each other as well. They kind of spoke at two different levels, at the more macro kind of bigger issues and also at the project level. And it really worked well. And they really bounced off each other really well.
Yeah, I agree with you. They bounced off each other. That's the right term for it. I enjoyed listening to them, kind of like a meeting of minds, wasn't it? I could have listened to it all day as well. Yeah. So what for you were the most interesting points from that discussion?
I mean, there were so many, but one that kind of stuck with me afterwards was talking about kind of taking a holistic approach and making sure that, particularly in terms of, project work and costing things out, making sure that you've made sure each part of your project and your intervention is costed for, and utilising the networks and contacts that you've got, to share information, to share learning, to bring expertise in from outside. If you haven't got that in your organisation, you can't always address all the needs at once, but there might be people within your network that you can work with to address some of the things that you can't, and just the kind of overall theme of being stronger together, utilising those elements and making the whole package stronger.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you that that's an important point, isn't it? I think sometimes we can get bogged down with the doing, and taking time to step back and reflect, and reflecting with other people who are doing similar work to you is always really useful and helpful. It gives you another perspective. And yeah, like you said, sharing expertise. I really enjoyed listening. Was it Sunshine who was talking about it? I really enjoyed listening to Sunshine talk about the friendships as well, and talking about having fun. And I think that's how we keep the energy going for work, isn't it? Is enjoying what we're doing. And that comes from sharing with people, doesn't it?
Yeah. And she also emphasised that it's okay to need support yourself. They started off the conversation saying, we're not immune to struggles ourselves, and women are not a homogenous group. We've all got different challenges and different barriers, and that, relying on your colleagues and your friends and your sisterhood, is an important part of doing the work that we do. And it's okay to step back and rely on other people for a moment,
Absolutely. Talking about homogenous groups, I enjoyed what she was saying about project participants, not thinking of people as being the women involved, not as being beneficiaries, but as experts of their own experiences, and that they should be the ones that should be in control of, articulating what the project should be about, how things should be approached, what are their priorities. I thought that was a really important point about not centering, as a project manager, maybe not centering yourself and focusing on co-creating when you're developing your project, and being flexible to change it as you go along.
Yeah, absolutely. And, how important that kind of co-creation is in enabling ownership and making sure a project's sustainable. Those you can't just sort of go in and do these things. You need to, make sure that it's led by the project participants that you're working with. Absolutely. They're the ones giving you the reason for the work, that your mandate to be there. So they should be the ones leading it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think these are tips relevant for, whether we're working from Wales or whether we're working on the ground in Africa or other countries, indeed. Did you think there were any other kind of takeaways for people based in Wales.
Yeah, I think there was some interesting points, particularly towards the end, around kind of what Wales can do to support some of this work, particularly around sort of advocacy and around funding as well, and maybe sort of campaigning for longer term funding, so that there's some more sustainability. This work doesn't happen overnight, right? There's big systemic change that we're trying to make, and that can't be done in a 3-year funding cycle. So, I mean, I think, there's partly campaigning for longer term funding and maybe direct funding to some of these projects, but also around holding governments to account in terms of supporting women and empowering women and leading by example. I mean, I know Wales has been seen to do really well in that, in terms of the number of women representatives in the Senedd. If we can support other governments around the world to kind of move towards that could make a real difference.
Yeah, lovely. Oh, well, Beth, thank you very much. I really enjoyed that, and I hope that we've given some food for thought for our audiences. I would say that's a wrap.
I would say so too.
I would like to thank our wonderful guests, Sunshine Komusana and Joanna Jonas, for giving us their time and sharing their experiences with us. And Beth, thank you for organising it.
No problem. It was my pleasure.
Okay, listeners, keep an eye out for our next podcast. But in the meantime, you can find out more about Hub Cymru Africa's work by visiting our website on www.hubcymruafrica.wales. Bye.
Bye.